Hi, everyone. I am really excited to be here today to talk to you about traveling libraries and librarians in Wisconsin history. As librarian in the archives and local history department at LPL, this is a topic I'm really passionate about, and I hope you are too after reading about Cussy of Troublesome Creek. Please bear with me as you listen to me talk in this video for the next 10 or 15 minutes. To try and make it a little less weird, I'm going to show you historical photos instead of my face for most of the time. Also, while this is a presentation of sorts, I'm trying to treat it much more like an informal rant where I tell you about a woman who I'm pretty sure is my favorite historical figure and a piece of our Wisconsin history that I just love. So again, bear with me. I will switch you over to my slides that have the historical photos now. Oops. Okay. So a few months ago when I heard that you were going to read a book that is about a traveling librarian who works during the New Deal era and would maybe want to hear about traveling librarians in Wisconsin, I got really excited because I realized that this would finally be my opportunity to give a talk about Lutie Stearns. In short, Lutie helped organize 1,400 traveling libraries in Wisconsin, 14 traveling library systems, and 150 free public libraries. She helped dozens of libraries write grants to be funded by the Carnegie Foundation to build permanent libraries too, making Wisconsin in the top 10 states to receive the largest amount of grants to fund Carnegie libraries. So in other words, all of the traveling library systems and individual libraries that she organized helped set a foundation for the libraries and library systems in the state that we see today. While I was reading the book Woman of Troublesome Creek, which I'll be honest, I haven't finished. I'm not actually that far at all. But yet I couldn't help but thinking how much Cussy would love Lutie Stearns. Lutie would be a hero of hers just like she is for me, I am sure of it. Whenever I read about traveling librarians from the early 1900s, I can't help think that they were all absolutely sensational human beings, even though that's not something I typically do in studying historical figures. I typically try to be critical, but my heart just melts for traveling librarians. And I'm sure after reading Cussy's story, you all feel the same way too, unless the book's ending is really going to throw me off or something. But just because I want us all to realize how truly spectacular these women were, I'm going to give you some historical background to why women like Lutie and characters like Cussy exist for us to celebrate today. And I just want to clarify, I am sure Lutie Stearns existed in nearly every state in some form, but in Wisconsin, we're lucky to have Lutie to celebrate. So I'm sure many of you already know parts of this history, but I'm just going to take a few minutes to sum up the historical context of why traveling libraries and librarians like Lutie Stearns were able to get their job done. They were empowered by the progressive movement. After an unprecedented economic depression in 1893, people started to elect politicians who wanted to provide funding for social programs that would help the working class and create jobs. Wisconsin was a hub for the progressive era. One thing that was born out of the progressive era was the Wisconsin idea, which was the philosophy that the UW system was created under. The goal was that if the state government funded education, educated individuals would then become leaders to improve the quality of life in the state and their research and their passion. Things that came out of the Wisconsin idea were radio programming innovations that gave birth to public talk radio, which kept those isolated in the North Woods of Wisconsin connected to new research around health, food, agriculture, construction. And it's not a stretch to say that that work saved lives. The Wisconsin idea also funded research around contour farming, which happened right here in the Coulee region. This research led to farming practices to help avoid the devastating erosion that threatened the livelihood of our area's farmers. Another key ingredient to our state's history that the Wisconsin idea funded was dairy research that would go on to equip Wisconsin to become the nation's leader in dairy production. The Wisconsin idea built the state that we know and love today. The Wisconsin idea also funded libraries. Progressives wrote their legislature and built their progressive platforms in libraries with the help of librarians, and saw firsthand the power libraries held for research, literacy, and the quality of life for Wisconsin's citizens. Lutie Stearns knew this, and she used this. And she also realized that rural families couldn't justify a trip into town to go to the library, so she would have to find a way to bring the library to their farms. In 1896, Lutie co-founded the Wisconsin Free Library Commission, and she would spend the next 20 years of her life traveling the state by horse-drawn carriage or sleigh in the wintertime, transporting traveling libraries by day and attending political functions by night, where she would lobby for funding from elite who earned their wealth from the lumber industry or state senators or even county board members. People who made decisions for our state and local communities. She single-handedly did this. Now, just to try to bring this around locally, one of the 14 traveling library systems that Lutie Stearns helped organize in Wisconsin was the La Crosse County Traveling Library System, which has today morphed into the La Crosse County Library System. Lutie traveled to La Crosse in November of 1904 and connected with local community member Emily Tiffany, who was a part of a women's literary club, and Alice Smith, who was a librarian from the La Crosse Public Library. Together, the three presented a case to the La Crosse County Board to fund a traveling library system that would bring books to rural county residents outside of the city. Lutie would also, she would argue that any building with a countertop or table could serve as a traveling library host. So a general store, a post office, a school, or even a private home. By 1923, the county was able to establish the La Crosse County Library System thanks to this framework set up by Lutie Stearns and Emily Tiffany. It was this success in the La Crosse County that made Lutie realize that how much more support she would get from local governments if she had allies and community organizations and institutions to aid her lobbying for traveling library systems. After 1904, Lutie then improved her marketing and relationship strategies. She wrote pamphlets and business cards and flyers and handed them out. And she was sure to establish relationships with community activists, mostly women, if she could, but also found allies in attending events like farmers' meetings to gain rural support as well. And she would do this before going to the county boards and ask for monetary support for traveling libraries. So what does this have to do with Cussy in 1930s Appalachia? Well, it was this progressive era politics that influenced FDR's New Deal in 1933 to help the US recover from the Great Depression. Thankfully, with funding into the Works Progress Administration, unmarried women like Cussy were able to find jobs to support their families with their small income, but also their communities by encouraging literacy and education. Rural families were in a place where children quit school at 14 or younger to help their family farm or find a job at a mine to help put food on the table. Traveling libraries kept these children and adults still connected to a form of education with new cookbooks or agriculture magazines, or helped them escape a hard day with a classic novel or short stories. Either way, these traveling libraries and librarians supported the livelihood of rural communities all across the US. All right, so to make it a little bit more dynamic, I'm going to now try to answer some questions. Thank you all for listening to me today.